So, good morning, colleagues. Just want to indicate that we are waiting a couple of additional minutes for everyone to join us on this SDG Synthesis Coalition update discussion. I'm Alan Fox, the Deputy Director for the UNDP Independent Evaluation Office. So please, we'll just wait another minute or two, and then we'll start the proceedings. Thanks for your patience. So, colleagues and guests, we have 58 persons who have already joined us. So why don't we go ahead and begin? And I'm sure there will be others that will come online as we go through this discussion. Again, my name is Alan Fox, the Deputy Director for the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP, and we're very pleased to have distinguished member states and partners participating in today's discussion. It provides an opportunity for us to discuss the SDG Synthesis Coalition, where we stand with the first partnership study, and also beginning to segue into the development of the additional pillar studies. Without further ado, however, I'd like to pass to our Director, Oscar Garcia, Director of the Independent Evaluation Office of UNDP, who will go ahead and give us some introductory remarks to get the meeting started. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan. Excellencies, distinguished delegates from member states, colleagues from United Nations agencies, partners from development cooperation, representatives from civil society organizations, a very good morning to you, good afternoon. Many thanks for joining us to this second debriefing to member states on the SDG Synthesis Coalition. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. We all know that the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals we are off track. Unfortunately, the pandemic of the COVID-19 has exacerbated some setbacks of development achievements. And therefore, it is important to reinforce our commitment towards achieving the goals set in 2015. It is a collective effort that will be done mainly at the country level. And therefore, we need to put all our energy, our capacities at the service of the people that we are trying to support with the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. But in order to do so, we need to better understand what is working and what is not working. For the remaining years until 2030, we would like to really accelerate progress towards achieving the SDGs. And for that, it would be important to take stock of progress made, of the initiatives that are really making significant changes, positive changes for the achievement of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And we think that evaluation has an important role to play. Evaluation is an activity that systematically reviews what is working, what is not working, and most importantly, ask the question, why? What are the factors that lead to performance? That's why this SDG coalition really wants to gather the best of evaluative evidence that already exists in the world, in so different countries, in so different settings, and put them together and make sense of this dispersed and fragmented evidence to inform the deliberation of member states in advancing the agenda for sustainable development. This is an effort, a collective effort from the evaluation community, gathering, of course, members of the United Nations Evaluation Group, of the EvalNet of OECD countries, of the Evaluation Cooperation Group of the International Financial Institutions, of ALNAP from the humanitarian domain, and from civil society organizations who are concerned and try to bring the evidence of all these efforts to the center of intergovernmental deliberations and provide those syntheses as an input to inform the deliberations on evidence. so that we can really take account of what is working, what is not working, accelerate what is working, and stop doing what is not working. With that aim, we thank you for your presence today. We will hear about the updates provided by the Secretariat of the Coalition, and I have the pleasure to pass the floor to my colleague, Ana Rosa Suarez, who is spearheading this effort from the SDG Coalition. Thank you very much for joining us today. Over to you.
Thank you, Oscar. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, hello, excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear partners and UN colleagues. It is a pleasure to be able to report on some exciting progress of the SDG Syntheses Coalition. It has been really gratifying to see the growing support to this initiative and watch so many different parties join and interest build around what seems to be a year of relaunching the SDGs to build back forward and accelerate development and humanitarian results. As I mentioned in our last briefing, the coalition is a concrete and committed response to the UN reform. It has engaged nearly 40 UN entities. I want to take this opportunity to thank the over 50 countries, several global evaluation, synthesis, and research networks, civil society organizations, private sector, philanthropic foundations, as well as the UN leadership of the General Assembly President, the ECOSOC President, the Deputy Secretary General's Office, and UNDESA. They have engaged with this promising initiative to work on this 5 SDG pillar synthesis of global living evidence to offer a methodologically credible and rigorous interpretation of useful lessons around what has worked, what has not worked, and insights on barriers, enablers, and drivers of results and innovation towards the achievement and acceleration of the SDGs. Our first synthesis on the partnership pillar synthesis is progressing well. Now it is in its inception or searching screening phase. It is also providing us with a proof of concept and model for the other syntheses. So having this foundation will enable us to progress much quicker with the future synthesis. Major progress has been made also on attracting interest to the SDG Synthesis Coalition in the wider evaluation, synthesis, and research communities outside of the UN synthesis, the UN system. There is significant interest in this initiative, and opportunities are being pursued in relation to involving external technical and methodological experts, such as from the Camp of Collaboration and others. The development of the governance and the quality assurance structures are also progressing. We have formed the Secretariat for the coalition, currently led by UNDP, the management group for the partnership pillar, and the technical advisory panel for the partnership pillar is also in the process of confirming invitations. We're in a good position to do this much faster and efficiently now for this next synthesis that we're going to start talking about today. We have yet to complete the list of the high-level political officials to form the steering committee, and we welcome nominations by the end of the month, preferably from you, governments and distinguished delegates. Next slide, please. The governance and quality assurance structure, just to recap, is composed of the steering committee to have the high-level political officials that will bring the right prominence to the initiative in the SDG Summit and the Summit of the Future, and to promote the uptake of the lessons in the different countries. There will be a technical advisory panel for each synthesis with senior experts to quality assure the synthesis, and a management group for each of the syntheses as well to manage the exercise. Next slide, please. We also have exciting progress on a funding strategy. IO is working with the UN Joint SDG Fund to create a global joint program, a facility, as an alternative funding mechanism that donors may choose to earmark amounts to the resources to the coalition or specific synthesis from the resources they already have or wish to put in the joint SDG fund. The joint program that establishes this facility for the SDG Synthesis Coalition will have 2 phases. The first phase will generate the 5 Ps, the 5-pillar synthesis. It will develop the evaluative evidence portal for synthesis that will be connected to our artificial intelligence analytics tools, AIDA, and will work with the RC offices and different partners to promote the uptake of the lessons. The second phase will update the synthesis around 2028. We'll get started to update the synthesis with additional lessons and insights. So when it's time, we'll be ready for with information for the post-2030 discussions that will start to happen once it gets closer to the deadline. And that second phase will also focus on further promoting the uptake of the results generated by the updated synthesis. This collaboration with the joint SDG fund is of extreme relevance, considering that the fund is the global UN flagship pooled fund mandated to enhance the UN development system's coherence and coordination and to finance the acceleration of the SDGs. Next slide. As I mentioned, there has been great interest in coming together and contributing to the synthesis. The UN entities you see in this slide are just a few that have already made up their mind and related to what pillar they would like to contribute to or be focused on. We also have numerous countries, member states, and private sector foundations and other partners that are identifying their interest in choosing their pillars. And some of the main partners that we have are Barbados, Canada, Denmark, Ireland, Nigeria, Norway, Spain, the United Kingdom, and USA. Many others are deciding where they're positioning themselves in terms of their support and participation. We hope that over the next few days, more partners will join this collective effort and add their names and support to the coalition of the willing. Distinguished delegates and partners, thank you for your attention. Let's now meet the co-chairs of the 3 out of the 5 pillar synthesis that we have started. Over to you, Alan. Thank you.
So Ana Rosa, thank you very much for setting the stage for us. The next steps are really to go through the progress being made on the first 3 pillars of this activity. I think as many of you know, we have co-chairs for the partnership pillar that are UNDP and Global Affairs Canada. We have with us one of our colleagues from our IEO staff, Ben Murphy, who's going to give us a bit of an update on where we are with the partnerships piece. And I'll also be asking Isabelle Mercier to perhaps say a few words. She's the director of the Evaluation Division of Global Affairs Canada, and I see that she's on the meeting with us, so we look forward to Isabelle's comments as well. But Ben, why don't you take the floor first and give us a sense of where we are with the partnerships piece. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alan, and hello to all. My name is Ben Murphy, as Alan mentioned. I'm with the UNDP IEO and one of the focal points for the partnership pillar. I believe that many here were with us when we launched the pillar in February, and it's a pleasure to come back and to give you some updates. For those that weren't with us at that time, though, just briefly, this partnership pillar synthesis is focused exclusively on SDG 17, which really aims to strengthen the collaboration and the means of implementation for sustainable development. So it's really a target that is there to enable progress to the other goals, and hence a good justification for going first with this one. Since that launch meeting, we have progressed very well, as Ana Rosa mentioned, and the work is fully underway now. Next week, we expect to finalize our methodological protocol for the work. which has been developed by the American Institutes of Research, and that's the organization that we've commissioned to conduct this first partnership pillar synthesis. This protocol sets out in a very detailed roadmap how the synthesis will systematically gather and screen information that's relevant to this SDG 17, and gives us a plan for how we will synthesize both the impact evaluations that we'll find, but also the UN performance and process evaluations that the team are already looking at. Also describes how we will analyze the voluntary national reviews, which will form part of a deviance assessment for this pillar, and also gives further detail on the quality appraisal and the critical appraisal for the evaluative evidence that we find to ensure that what goes into the synthesis and ultimately to the lessons is fully rigorous. This protocol has been reviewed once by the management group for the pillar, which consists of UN agencies and member states. And as Anna Rosa mentioned, this group has also agreed a technical advisory panel, which we're in the process of reaching out to. The technical advisory panel itself consists of subject matter specialists for this particular SDG 17, and also a methodologist. And these people have been or nominated from academia, from practitioners, civil society, and also from government representatives. And this panel, once in place, will review and provide technical oversight for the synthesis itself to ensure that the relevance of what the synthesis produces, and also the relevance of the lessons that come out of that. At the same time, given the tight deadline that we have and that our ambitions are going to the high-level political forum, the work is ongoing. AIR, or American Institutes of Research, are conducting their searches for evidence, drawing it together and screening the material that we have. So the work is fully underway. I think the last update from the partnership pillar is that going first, this has given us a great sense of what the undertaking involves, and I think it's set the foundations for how we can go about the remaining 4 pillars. And as Anna Rosa mentioned, I think this will lead to some expediting of the process, but it's great to see that we have a good system in place. I think it's also been pleasing at the same time to see that this pillar has attracted attention beyond the coalition itself, and even beyond the United Nations, and has gathered huge interest in the broadest evaluation and synthesis communities. So by the time we have our synthesis products ready, there should be a good audience and a good interest in people that are interested in our findings. Thank you very much.
Ben, very much appreciated for that update. Isabel, do you want to weigh in on any issues here? Thank you for joining us.
And I just wanted to say hello to everyone. I'm really excited to be a part of this process. We were excited at the beginning, and I think even more excited now as we see it evolve into something that has attracted people, interested parties from around the globe. I just wanted to say a few words about why Canada supports this work. Firstly, I think joint work is really, really, really important. Working across evaluation systems is really, I believe, the only way that will make some really good gains in terms of understanding progress on SDGs. We all have our different points of view. We all have our different ways of capturing data, but together, I think we'll give a really holistic picture of what is working and what isn't working. And I think this attempt at joint work is working very nicely, which brings me into another reason I'm excited about this work. And it's that it's evolving. It's evolving. It's allowed space for us as a group to form something that I believe is working and that will continue to work and set a foundation for the other pillars going forward. So that's all I really wanted to say. I wanted to outline that we were an early adopter in our I'm more than thrilled to continue to be part of this initiative. Thank you.
Isabel, thank you very much, and very much appreciate also the emphasis on how this is an evolving effort that all of us have an opportunity to contribute to, because that's certainly the message that we want to give in founding and putting this together. Colleagues, we're going to have an opportunity for a number of the member state supporters to be able to engage later on in the meeting. So I wanted to, at this point, move to the next two pillars, to have an opportunity for the co-chairs, both for the people pillar and the planet pillar, to go ahead and make some introductory comments in terms of how these are moving forward. In the case of the planet, of the people pillar, we have a triumvirate of talent, if you will, from 3 different agencies who are spearheading this, from UNICEF, UN Women, and UNESCO. So we have with us today Kere Albright, who's the Evaluation Deputy Director at UNICEF. We have Inga Sniokaite, who is the UN Women Chief of Independent Evaluation Service. And we have Claudia Ebaguen, who is the UNESCO Head of Evaluation. Colleagues, I don't know which of you 3 want to take the stage first, but please, I leave it in your hands to talk us through where we're beginning to get moving on the people pillar. Thanks.
Carrie, perhaps you can go first. Sorry.
Sure. So Alan, just to clarify, would you like I've prepared some remarks on behalf of UNICEF. Would you like to hear those now, or would you just like a quick introduction and we return to the full remarks later on?
No, I think we should do the program now. So please go ahead and do your remarks.
Okay.
And we'll do likewise for Planet afterwards. So yes,
Okay.
This is a chance for that.
So fantastic. Thank you, Alan. And hello, Excellencies, distinguished delegates and partners, and all due protocol observed. So over the past 6 or 7 years, UNICEF has developed a growing international reputation in evidence synthesis. This started initially with our Office of Research, with products including quite a high-profile living evidence map of global evidence for children, related to the 5 goal areas of UNICEF's previous strategic plan, which we co-developed with the Campbell collaboration. And then in recent years, UNICEF's evaluation function has also developed a growing interest in this area. In the past year alone, we undertook syntheses of evaluative evidence in areas including disability, youth and peace building with UNFPA, and gender equality with UN Women and other partners. So why do we think evidence synthesis is such an important untapped modality to support delivery of child rights and the 2030 agenda? So to share just a few reasons, building upon what we've already heard, we see it as being essential to help identify what works and what doesn't, in line with increasing interest in impact evaluation and results reporting at the outcome and impact levels. But even when we know what works, we still need to identify implementation factors for how and why things work or do not, including factors such as capacity, resourcing, political economy, and behaviors. It helps to identify interventions worthy of scaling up, or indeed of scaling down or stopping, to ensure the best value for money in an increasingly resource-constrained environment. We also think it can identify stubborn knowledge gaps and support prioritization of new areas of evidence generation, or conversely, to reduce duplication of effort across different stakeholders. And we see it as really essential to produce a bird's eye view of the entire global evidence base to inform design and delivery of new programs, policy and advocacy strategies, and remembering that this may sometimes contradict insights from single studies. And finally, to identify accelerator actions for the SDGs, as Director Garcia said. We need to go beyond individual thematic evidence products, beyond priorities and products of individual member states, individual UN agencies, individual sectors, to really generate and identify holistic cross-sectoral insights, as well as interdependencies and trade-offs. And we desperately need this deeper insight to be able to see the whole forest, not just the isolated trees, to stand a chance of recovering lost ground and attaining the SDGs in this last decade for action. So our interest, bear with me, excuse me, is really UNICEF is responsible for 7 SDG indicators and either supports or is a co-custodian for a further 12. However, UNICEF is the global custodian for children across the entire Sustainable Development Agenda. The realization of child rights and of the SDGs are inextricably linked and mutually reinforcing, with all 35 explicitly child-related indicators across the 17 SDGs being linked to articles under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. We're all aware that the COVID-19 pandemic has rolled back years of progress on the SDGs. We saw how it evolved from being depicted initially primarily as a health crisis to a recognition that it was a widespread human rights crisis, exposing long-standing, deep-seated systematic human rights and child rights violations, especially for those who are already disadvantaged. To add to this, today's children are growing up in a world of polycrisis, beset by multiple interdependent shocks, including the worst global energy crisis since the 1970s, violent conflicts, spiraling food insecurity and prices, climate change and environmental degradation, a resurgence of near eradicated diseases such as polio, a record global debt burden, and the fastest global inflation rate this century. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. So hence why the people synthesis is our core focus. In an era of increasing complexity, we have to do something different. We have to collaborate, not compete. We have to be smarter about our interventions. We need to think systems, not single sectors. And for us, the SDG Synthesis Coalition provides that opportunity. This is not to say that it's an easy task. The scale of the challenge is immense and the time frame is exceedingly tight. We need to be both methodologically robust, but also be sure that we pay attention to a diversity of types of evidence, of geographic sources of evidence, and of course of stakeholder voices. We need to pay attention to the positive outliers, those countries and interventions that have achieved results against the odds and where others have not, often with the same or fewer resources and in challenging circumstances. We need to be action orientated. The final products cannot just be 5-pillar reports. Machine learning and artificial intelligence can help ensure that the findings are living syntheses, keeping the evidence base up to date and easily accessible to support real-time decision-making in the final years of the SDGs and beyond. We also need to engage users from the outset, national governments, private sector, funding partners, UN agencies, academics, evaluators, civil society, citizens, and many more to support follow-up activities and to strengthen the global evidence architecture for acceleration of SDG delivery. And finally, we're really genuine when we talk of the need of a coalition. UNICEF is committed to support UNDP, our fellow UN agencies and co-chairs, and this partnership more broadly. But we need all of you to help us deliver, whether it be through technical, financial, or political support. So please do step up and join us as a coalition partner now. Thank you for your attention.
Gary, thank you very much for the introduction to the people pillar, and also it's certainly much appreciated from our side at the UNDP that we have such a close cooperation with the UNICEF Evaluation Office in pursuing this. Claudia and Inga, do you want to weigh in on this, please? You both have the floor. I think Inga, you have your mute off, so why don't you proceed?
Thank you, Alan, and good morning, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and partners. So let me share also a few thoughts why UN Women is so excited to be part of the coalition and also the people pillar. I would share maybe 3 key reasons. So one of the reasons, of course, is learning potential. The people pillar is very complex, so it covers 5 SDGs focusing on poverty, food security, healthcare, education, and gender equality. So in line with the vision that Oscar described on the SDG synthesis, the people pillar is about learning and about what works and what doesn't work in sustainable development in these 5 SDGs. But what is also important from UN Women's perspective, and then I think from all United Nations perspective, that this covers work on gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. So given the overall centrality of gender equality in all sustainable development goals. Also, differently from other efforts to track SDGs, the synthesis will be based on a robust evaluative and research evidence and enablers and barriers of programming and policy initiatives for SDGs. I think another important reason is that it has a transformative potential by aggregating this complex and vast evidence, identifying gaps, and putting a spotlight on acceleration of sustainable development goals. For instance, the latest data on progress towards gender equality across sustainable development goals, compiled by UN Women's Gender Snapshot Report, reveals inadequacy of gender equality efforts. If changes will continue at the current rate, our analysis shows that gender equality will remain unrealized for centuries to come. At the current rate of progress, it will take up to 286 years to close gaps in legal protection and remove discriminatory laws, 140 years for women to be represented equally in positions of power and leadership in the workplace, and at least 40 years to achieve equal representation in national parliaments. So this type of statistics underscores an imperative for bold policy action and ambitious finance. So therefore, it is so critical that we have a clear picture and understanding of programs and policies that work in the area of sustainable development goals, and also what are the gender impacts of those programs and policies. Another reason to be part of this initiative is efficiency gain, working jointly with other United agencies, partners, and benefiting from the joint knowledge, experience, and resources, as well as really utilizing and leveraging the voice and energy and influence of the multi-stakeholder partnership. As Carrie already mentioned, UN Women, together with UNDP, UNICEF, UNFPA, and WFP, are currently leading SDG 5 synthesis, which is primarily based on the United Nations agencies' evaluations. So this particular initiative is planned to serve as an input to the people pillar. So the aim of this ongoing synthesis is to support learning and decision-making for future programming related to the SDG 5. So we really hope that some of the lessons learned from this initiative will inform the people pillar, particularly in the area of methodologies and approaches to synthesize evaluations from the United Nations agencies. And finally, much of our ambition in achieving SDGs really depends on successful partnership and the ability to galvanize action. Evaluation evidence shows that there are multiplier solutions available that could accelerate the positive change. And the people pillar synthesis is another contribution to shared responsibility and faster progress to scale up policies that work in achieving sustainable development goals. So I would like to join my colleagues and call for the support in joining SDG Synthesis Coalition and invite the member states to join this exciting partnership. So thank you for your attention.
Inge, thank you very much for that discussion and the challenges that we have ahead of us. And also, we certainly very much appreciate the work that the UN Women has done in spearheading the SDG 5 partnership efforts that really build into this work. Claudia, do you want to say a few words as well, please?
Thank you, Alan. Very nice to be part of this discussion, distinguished delegates, excellencies, colleagues. Good afternoon from Paris. So at the risk of repeating a bit of what my colleagues have already said, I'm just going to add a few comments from the side of UNESCO on trying to kind of set out for you why UNESCO is engaged, what we expect from this synthesis, what are perhaps some of the challenges we see along the way, and also highlight and underline that we as the my colleagues who have spoken before are very excited to be co-chairs of this endeavor, that we're fully committed, and that we're happy to be sharing that today, so that we hopefully help in improving and making others who are listening today also be very excited about this. As you all know, of course, UNESCO coordinates the international community to achieve education objectives on Sustainable Development 4, which is one of the SDG of the people pillar, which has 5 SDGs. And we do recognize that SDGs are interconnected and interrelated. And so the idea of looking at SDGs 1 through 5 definitely makes sense in this pillar. We do have some recent experience with Syntheses. This goes back to 2019, when we had a joint multi-agency synthesis on SDG 4 Target 5. And this was a combined effort with UNICEF, with the Norwegian Agency for Development Cooperation, with the World Bank. And that endeavor from 2019, and explored how education evaluations can better support member states to strengthen progress on gender parity, on equality, on inclusion in education. So just a little bit on why UNESCO thinks that this SDG coalition is worthwhile to support. Why do we want to be part as co-chair and part of the management group? So we realize the value and the power of Syntheses work. We all know that there is a wealth of information out there, including evaluation information, and that sheer amount of information means that it is easy for key insights to be lost. So synthesizing evaluation knowledge makes it easier to extract and to communicate what is vital, what is important, what is the evaluative evidence that needs to be taken into account by decision makers, by member states, and by other key stakeholders. In the case of UNESCO, as well as, of course, other agencies, we adopt many times a more narrow agency-focused perspective. So Syntheses provides that opportunity to take a broader view across agencies and across SDGs. This was already mentioned by my colleagues. And Syntheses work also offers other benefits. In this case, in particular, for example, it may help identify overlaps and intersectionality between the areas of work of the different agencies, identify areas for closer cooperation and complementarity among agencies, for example, health and education, gender equality, inclusion in education, etc. So it makes sense, again. It can also potentially help to identify how different strands of work complement each other. For example, the convening role, the advocacy work, the normative work, the policy work, and as well as upstream and downstream capacity development. And it can help across also cross-cutting issues, leaving no one behind, disability, inclusion. So it is a tall order, I recognize this. But what is also interesting, I think, is that there will be potentially, I think we're seeing this, a high level of engagement. And when there's a high level of engagement and attention to the outcomes of the synthesis, then this means a higher opportunity to make a difference, to reach the right decision makers at the right time. As I said, there are certain challenges, we've discussed them. There is a tight deadline. It is complex. We're dealing with 5 large SDGs. How do we integrate learning from prior synthesis? How to put together collaboration structures. And of course, we have the Secretariat who will be key to be as efficient as possible. But I think we are all ready together as co-chairs and as other members of the management team, with the Secretariat, with the steering committee, to become involved in this important collaboration and to move it forward. So again, my plea together with my other co-chairs to support this important process. Thank you.
Claudia, thank you, and thank you also, Inga and Carrie, for talking us through not only the importance of this effort, but also the support that your agencies are providing on it. And Claudia, your continuing discussion on the importance of synthesis, how it really provides an opportunity for our agencies to be able to work together very productively on this kind of issue. So, and just, you know, for all colleagues to know, we are very much in the formative stage of this people pillar effort. And so this was an opportunity to hear from the three co-chairs on how they're beginning to see this process, but you will hear in future meetings and updates real progress being made in that. To that extent, we also want to then move to the other pillar that is moving forward, and that's the planet pillar. And so I wanted to be able to pass the microphone first to, well, both to Andreas Röhmen, who is the Green Climate Fund Head of Evaluation, as well as Michael Spilsbury, who is the UN Environment Evaluation Office Director. Andreas and Michael, the floor is yours for you guys to decide how you'd like to give us a little sense of where we are in the formative start of the planet pillar activity. Andreas, please.
Thanks. I take it, Mike, you're fine with me taking the floor, but here we go. That's a true collaboration from the get-go. So, colleagues, thanks and good evening, good morning, distinguished excellencies and colleagues. My name is Andreas. As said, I'm the head of the Independent Evaluation Unit of the Green Climate Fund, based here in Songdo, South Korea. So for me, it's a little late, but still really excited to be here with all of you. It is really, and it gives me a distinct pleasure to speak to you today on the capacity as one of the co-chairs of the management group of the planet pillar of the SDG synthesis. And just to say in the outset, the Green Climate Fund was established in 2010 to support developing countries in the efforts to fight and respond to climate change. And the GCF is therefore an operating entity of the financial mechanisms of the UNFCCC. And my team here at the Independent Evaluation Unit basically ensures accountability and effectiveness. And that brings me directly to this important study that we have in front of us. So the IU conducts evidence-based and evidence-driven independent evaluations of the GCF's activities and synthesizes the learnings in the topics of climate action as well as sustainable development. So the SDG Planet Pillar covers several SDGs. It covers the SDGs 6, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And for us of special relevance here at the GCF is certainly the SDG 13 on climate action, as the GCF promotes the paradigm shift towards low emission and climate resilient development pathways. So by reviewing synthesized evidence on effectiveness of interventions for the planet pillar, we here, the GCF, we can both learn from and contribute to the global knowledge sharing on best practices for climate action. And the IU, with its own evidence reviews, has already highlighted the depth of causal studies conducted in developing countries in that area in climate action. So evidence gap maps and evidence reviews for each of the planet pillars SDGs will allow us and the project developers and the technical specialists and the practitioners to improve projects design by witnessing where the evidence is based in a robust and learning-oriented manner. We'll also be able, through evidence gap maps, we'll also be able to highlight where evidence gap maps are still existed. So in addition to this, when you look at the variety of other reviews, so systematic reviews and synthetic reviews for saturated cells in such a setting, this will also allow project developers and technical specialists to increase the likelihood of transformative projects and programs by either combining the effect sizes across different contexts in different countries, or by improving the programming for examining the underlying program theories. So there's a lot of opportunity to learn from the evidence that's out there globally on ways forward on how to fight climate change. Finally, the syntheses on the SDG 13 will also offer important evaluative evidence as there is a substantial and serious lack of synthesized knowledge on what works for whom and why from climate action in developing countries. So, as said, in respect to the GCF in particular will benefit substantively from looking at synthesized evidence in the people pillar, so the pillar that we've heard before with the SDGs 1, 2, 3 to 5, as well as the prosperity pillar, in addition to the planet pillar, as all of these themes are most often linked in climate action and climate projects that we have here considered at the GCF. So while my team and I are truly excited about the planet pillar syntheses, there are of course challenges and considerations that the planet pillar would need to reflect on. And we've had the opportunity so far, so Mike, as well as myself, met and discussed some of these issues, and allow me to briefly, from my perspective, highlight 3 of them. So firstly, it's all about the heterogeneity of interventions. The 5 SDGs that constitute the planet pillar, water, consumption and production, land, nature, biodiversity, and climate, are quite wide-ranging actions and interventions. And climate action, in particular, is very often sectorial based and very sectoral specific. While this may not be the case for nature conservation and biodiversity focused studies, they will look far more at the interconnectiveness of both the human, the anthropogene, as well as the nature component. Another problem is the lack of available data. As I mentioned before, there's generally a dearth of studies that assess the effectiveness of interventions related to the 5 SDGs under the planet pillar. This is the case especially for interventions that are still in the early stages of implementation. So climate change is indeed a topic that has become far more topical in recent years. So given the lack of studies on impact and interventions, it's highly likely that a planet pillar will have to consider the existing evidence that are far more along a theory of change, far more connected to the intermediate outcomes rather than the long-term impacts. So it could be an interesting additional element to shed some light to overarching theory of changes, as well as the interconnectedness between intermediate outcomes and a higher level. So finally, a final challenge that we see here is regarding to the little progress that has been made in the planet SDGs targets. So according to some studies from 3IE, the SDG 13, so the climate action SDG, is the SDG with the largest number of UN evaluations under the planet pillar. So we checked it, it's around 625. However, the evidence on effectiveness of these interventions related to the SDG 13 consists of a much smaller cluster of evaluations. So I think it would be for us to look through the syntheses for other types of impact evaluations and other types of studies that will help inform that. So that is why this study is of such importance. So the SDG 13 indicators remain far from their targets, and the process is known to having deteriorated as well when we look at recent reports. So from the perspective of the SDGs 12, 14, and 15, progress has also largely stalled. They also have a small body of existing evidence on intervention effects. So the one SDG that shows some signs of notable progress on the global target level is under the pillar SD6, clean water and sanitation. And that obviously links very well to the day that we've got today with the International Water Day. So you see the linkages as these topics become far more important in our day-to-day discussions. So taking this all into consideration, the IEU here at the GCF, at the Green Climate Fund, as well as the IEO from UNEP, as the co-chair that will speak just right after me, of this planet pillar, will work very closely with the secretariat that we have here today under the leadership of UNDP IEO to serve this purpose of connecting this coalition, the Syntheses Coalition, and other partner organizations. So from my end, we look very much forward to learning from the process made with an ongoing partnership on the different syntheses that we have. So the partnership synthesis itself, the people's synthesis, but also the planet synthesis. Let me also use this opportunity to thank for this opportunity here to collaborate also with other UN entities that are leading these different pillars. So I think this is very important that we have these meetings here today to also exchange on our learning and exchange on our ways forward, and gather today through your participation. And we hope that you have a lot of comments to us from your early feedbacks on your views on both the planet and the people's pillar, as we are redefining our ways forward and our approaches for the months to come. So thank you with this, and I hand it back, or hand it over, I should say, to my dear friend there of UNEP, Mike. Over to you.
Great, thanks, Andreas. Well, thanks, and it's a pleasure to be here, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, colleagues, and partners. I'm Mike Spilsbury, Director of the Evaluation Office of the UN Environment Programme. So many thanks, Andreas. You've made my job quite easy. You've covered a lot. So thanks for your introduction. I'm really looking forward to working closely with you as a co-chair for this pillar and this major effort. And I'm sure I speak for both of us in saying we really look forward to encouraging people to join us and to working with all interested organisations wishing to engage in this important work. You know, planetary issues are in front of us, and if we just take a planetary perspective for a moment, you know, clearly climate change, nature and biodiversity loss, and pollution and waste add up to 3 global self-inflicted crises that are closely interconnected and put the well-being of current and future generations at unacceptable risk. And these crises are, as we all know, being driven by unsustainable production and consumption. But we're not without hope, and that's where sort of UNEP's vision steps in the sense that you know, UNEP's all about trying to promote ambitious and coordinated action by governments, businesses, and people globally to prevent and reverse the worst impacts of environmental decline by rapidly transforming key systems, including energy, water, and food, so that our use of land and oceans becomes more sustainable. But transforming social and economic systems means improving our relationship with nature and understanding its value and putting that value at the heart of how we make decisions. So science and evidence from evaluations and synthesis, like we're talking about today, is fundamental to providing some of the answers to these most pressing sustainability issues. And, you know, of course, we need to feed that evidence and that science into decision-making and policies. So, you know, last year, UNEP celebrated its 50th anniversary, actually, which was quite a celebration, I must say. UNEP has provided leadership in caring for the environment by informing and enabling and inspiring nations and people to improve their quality of life without compromising future generations. So UNEP's all about, and this is at the heart of why we're so interested in working on this planet pillar, about providing scientific solutions and guidance on sound policies and effective environmental laws to promote human and planetary health. It's about building the capacity of member states to achieve sustainable results across science, policy, law and governance, and technological innovation. And through campaigns, UNEP's about raising awareness and advocating for effective action on critical challenges. It's a leading global authority on the environment, a global actor with the mandate and capacity to bring together nations and thought leaders, businesses and civil society to tackle these huge environmental challenges of our time. Within the UN, UNEP is a voice for the environmental dimension of the Sustainable Development Goals. And UNEP is actually custodian for 25 of the SDG indicators across SDGs 6, 8, 12, 14, 15, and 17. We're custodian for topics relating to resource management and protection of water, marine and terrestrial ecosystems, circular economy, including sustainable management and efficient use of natural resources, and for environmentally sound management of chemicals and waste. A lot has already been said, so moving to the synthesis work, a lot has already been said, and UNEP certainly shares and aligns ourselves with the motivations that were so ably articulated by our coalition colleagues just a few moments ago from UNICEF, UN Women and UNESCO, and most recently that's for the people pillar, and most recently Andreas for the planet pillar. Andreas has already highlighted some of the challenges for the planet pillar, so I'll just be brief in picking up on a few of them. As he said, the scope of interventions that are associated with the planet SDGs is very broad indeed. Evidence from systematic reviews and impact evaluations is relatively limited under this pillar and unevenly distributed across the huge array of environmental issues covered by those SDGs. There are many project level evaluations to draw from, providing evidence at outcome level. However, as we know, environmental dimensions can be highly dynamic and interventions are often quite context specific. And this is why we need synthesis to tell us what works and what is generalizable. And most importantly, and this was stressed very well by our colleague from UNICEF, we need to make sure that this evidence gets where it's needed in supporting decision making. So I was the last to go, and probably sorry, just lost my place a moment. I'm personally looking forward to working with Andreas and his colleagues at the GCF and the consortium secretariat and other consortium members as we embark on this collaborative work. And really, we welcome all committed like-minded professionals to work with us on this important synthesis of evidence for the planet pillar. So those were my remarks. Yeah, I was the last to go, tried to keep it short, and I hand it back now to, I think it's to Alan, who's going to facilitate some questions and answers, I think. So thanks a lot for the opportunity. Really enjoyed joining this meeting. And it was a great opportunity actually to hear all the exciting comments from colleagues within UNEG, the UN agencies. And so thanks once again to UNDP for getting us all together and getting this really exciting initiative moving. It's very much appreciated. And we think it's going to add a lot of value to the global community. So thanks, over and out.
Michael, thank you very much for those comments. And Andreas, thanks also for you sticking with us at this late hour in Korea. We really appreciate your engagement on the planet pillar. We also very much appreciate Carrie and Claudia and Inga's discussion. Colleagues and guests, I have two items I want to do. One, I hope you're having an opportunity to think through questions that you have for the participants today in the time we have remaining. I want to, before talking about some of the next steps, which are on the screen there, I wanted to first invite two of our strong member state support persons who have really engaged on behalf of their government and in taking a look at how this coalition is moving, also providing financial support. So I don't know, Rachel Ingersoll, who is the evaluation manager in the evaluation and audit unit of Ireland Department of Foreign Affairs. Rachel, if you're willing to say a few words in terms of some of your interests, that would be appreciated. Following that, I'm going to ask Daniel Jacobo, who's the Director General for Sustainable Development Policies and Knowledge Management for the Spanish International Cooperation, also to say a few words for us. But if I can first pass to Rachel and then to Daniel, that would be very much appreciated.
Thank you so much, Alan, and distinguished excellencies and representatives today. As introduced, my name is Rachel Ingersoll, and I'm an evaluation manager with Ireland's Department of Foreign Affairs. I am representing Ireland as a member of the management group for the current synthesis study underway on the partnership pillar. Ireland has also committed funding support for this study. Just to speak to the process in general, so far it has been very well organized, co-chaired by the UNDP and Global Affairs Canada. The management group has formally met once to date, earlier this month. The members of the management group engaged in a robust discussion and fed back on the study's methodological approach as presented by the American Institutes for Research, who are the consultant leading the study. I would like to thank the teams from the UNDP Internal Evaluation Office and the American Institutes for Research for facilitating the process thus far. We really look forward to continuing to participate and to supporting the Syntheses team in this study. Ireland does see the value of the Syntheses study, especially as it will form the basis for the other 4 pillar studies, the people and the planet pillars, which were discussed earlier, and the upcoming prosperity and peace synthesis studies. For Ireland, we anticipate that the evidence that will emerge from this current synthesis study on the partnership pillar will be of value to the SDG's high-level political forum on sustainable development in July. And indeed, we're looking forward to the findings from this study contributing to discussions during the SDG summit in September, for which Ireland is co-facilitating negotiations on the political declaration. And as we know, the world is currently at the midpoint for the SDGs Agenda 2030, and we acknowledge how vital it is to work together as a committed country partner and among partners in a more global sense to really understand what is working and where challenges may lie, and what we can do to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs in the coming years of this decade. To this, it is great to see the number of agencies, organizations, country partners, and others who presented or made interventions today, as well as those who joined the meeting with an interest to learning more about the process. I feel it attests to the importance of these studies and to the growing support for the Syntheses Coalition efforts. So many thanks.
Rachel, thank you very much. And the support from Ireland on this initiative is really, really appreciated. Daniel, can you take the floor as well?
So, good morning, distinguished representatives from the different agencies of the UN and different bilateral partners and multilaterals. My name is Daniel Jacobo, Director of the Evaluation Division here in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Spain. Since last year, we've been following straightly this initiative that, as Spain, we think is going to help our knowledge and the knowledge of the international community on the advancements of the agenda, of the 2030 agenda. For the government of Spain, this is a great opportunity to understand not only our own advances, but the advances of the global community. And I would like to personally thank the UNDP IEO for all the help and for facilitating the contribution of bilaterals in this initiative. Also, I would like to acknowledge the great work of the American Institutes for Research in presenting the methodology for the first synthesis, the synthesis of the Pillar 5 on partnerships. From Spain and from this Ministry of Foreign Affairs, we will contribute to the initiative in this synthesis, in this first synthesis, by participating in the management group, in the technical advisory panel, and also in the steering committee. We would like to keep on going with financial contributions, and also we will explore our participation in the next synthesis, for sure in the synthesis of people. So thank you very much, and back over to you.
Daniel, thank you very much. The leadership of Spain, not only on this effort with the SDGs, but also previously with the Millennium Development Goals, is very much noted. And so we're quite thrilled to have you with us in terms of the SDG Synthesis Coalition. Colleagues, that ends our kind of formal presentations. We now open the floor for questions and answers, and we'll also provide you just a little bit of an update in terms of the next steps and how we're moving forward. So the floor is open for persons who would like to raise questions. There was one question in the chat that we received from you, Endesa, Joep Thendesen. in terms of clarifying how the partnership pillar analysis will relate to the partnerships listed in the various voluntary national reviews. I would like to ask one of our colleagues on the Secretariat, Shiv, to see if he might be willing to make a brief response on that. Shiv, if you're on board, why don't you go ahead and provide a response to Jut, if you could. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks there. Can you see and hear me? Okay. Yeah. So again, I'd just like to thank distinguished representatives and excellencies for your participation and support today. It's been a really great briefing. And this question specifically was asked by UNDESA on how, for us to clarify how the partnerships pillar analysis relates to the partnerships listed in the various voluntary national reviews. And I think this is a really important question, and I'd like to respond as the coalition's chief synthesis methodologist. So I just wanted to say that VNRs are one element of the synthesis. So there's several strands in this evidence synthesis. Other strands include a positive deviance analysis, and of course, the synthesis of impact evaluations and UN internal evaluations as well. On the VNR strand specifically, so AIR's protocol details a textual analysis of the VNRs in order to explore what factors contribute to achieving SDG 17 objectives, and to further look at what themes they uncover about progress towards this SDG 17. So more specifically, AIR are going to be using VNR data for a few specific objectives. So firstly, that's to identify the most basic level, which countries report VNR data and which country level characteristics can predict whether VNR data are reported. Secondly, it's to examine themes on partnerships in the VNR data using topic modeling and sentiment analysis to assess on what topics countries report and whether they have positive or less positive things to report. These will then be linked to data and other evidence on the SDG 17 indicators that come from the other strands of the synthesis. And finally, there'll be a more in-depth analysis on a selection of countries that do particularly well on SDG 17. So just to say that this analysis will be considered in the whole and triangulated with data and evidence from elsewhere in the synthesis on SDG 17. I also just wanted to add how this analysis, how we're using and coordinating with existing efforts on VNR data. So firstly, the Coalition Secretariat are attending the VNR workshop in April in order to align and engage with VNR penholders. And secondly, AIR have already received existing analysis on VNRs from the UN Committee for Development Policy. So, they have a sense of what VNR say on SDG 17. So I think there's two key messages. We're coordinating to the extent possible with existing work on VNRs. And the second message is that, the VNR analysis will be one strand of the synthesis and will be triangulated with other elements of it. Thank you.
Shiv, thank you for that response on it. And again, we have some time available for questions from other members of our participants. So please don't be shy, put your hand up or put something in the chat. We'll be happy to follow it up. While you're thinking about it, let me pass back to our director, Oscar Garcia, who's going to go ahead and make a few reflections from the presentations that went on today, as well as to just give us a sense of some of the next steps, which you see in the slide in front of you. Oscar, please.
Thank you very much, Alan. And indeed, you have seen, colleagues, the richness of this proposition, the commitment from the various UN agencies and bilateral partners, as well as multilateral partners in this initiative, which is really exciting. We are also aware of the challenges that are entailed, and we have identified some of the challenges, as mentioned by our colleagues from the GCF and UNEP, as well as UNICEF. However, we are all committed to make progress because we need to put all this valuable evidence at the center of intergovernmental deliberations and negotiations, and that's why we think we are really serving that purpose. I really would like to highlight one of the key information points provided by Ana Rosa Suarez on the financing for this initiative. The ability to link the SDG Syntheses Coalition to the SDG Multi-Party Trust Fund is really great news, because that really enables to provide financial contributions through an existing mechanism in a way that strengthens the existing collaboration platforms, not just for the production of these 5 syntheses, but also moving forward. But of course, we need to respond to immediate pressing demands for insights. As you know, as we approach the high-level political forum of July, there are 3 aspects within this partnership pillar related to the components of SDG 17 that are of relevance to member states. One of them being financing for sustainable development, the second one being trade, the third one being technology, and of course, capacity development to track progress towards the SDGs on statistical capacities. All these domains will be covered under the first synthesis and will provide important insights and recommendations on how to strengthen these enablers for the remaining 4 pillars of the SDGs. So I think we will be able to provide some concrete messages that will really improve the evidence base of the deliberations as we move forward. And you have here the next steps, to which I would like to invite our colleague Ana Rosa to drive us through again, because those are really very important next steps that may require your attention and your support as well. Thank you very much. Back to you, Alan.
Thank you, Oscar. And thank you, everyone. This has been quite informative, and it's clear how we are advancing. But there are a few things, a few reminders that are very important to ensure we keep on track to be ready at the time of the HLPF and the summits that are coming. So the first reminder I would like to give you is really the deadline of 31st March. We really hope to receive nominations for the steering committee. If you don't have a specific name of a high-level political official yet, at least highlight it to us that you're working on it and that you would like to make nominations, send a nomination for the steering committee by the 31st of March. So we very much welcome your information there. The other deadline coming up on May 1st is indication of interest to support the planet and the people pillar specifically. Of course, if you already know that you want to support the peace or the prosperity pillar, you're welcome to already indicate that to us. But just so we are able to start moving faster with the planet and the people pillar, we welcome your indication of support. And support can be in many kinds. It can be in kind, or providing staff, or JPOs, or technical advisors from your teams or experts that you know, or financially through the mechanism that one mechanism, and we can be directly to UNDP, but as the fiduciary agent, they're helping through the coalition. But also, we've strongly encouraged that we consider this new avenue, this facility, through the SDG, the joint SDG fund. We know that many of you already have resources in the fund, so it would be just a matter of earmarking resources specifically to this joint program, the facility of the SDG synthesis, and it can be to a specific synthesis or to the coalition as a whole, or to all syntheses, or even an agency if you prefer. So we hope to hear from you by May 1st, if possible. And if you are not, don't have concrete deliberations on exactly how much or what and how, but you are committed to being part of it, that's already very helpful. So we can start organizing and coordinating movement in terms of gathering information and resources to start working on the pillar. And then once we are engaged with the different parts, we'll get back to you informing the management group. Now you saw the chairs, but we now need to form the management group for each of these new pillars. And we will also be in touch in terms of gathering evidence, the reports, the different data that we will be analyzing for these studies. And as Oscar and Alan mentioned, some of the key dates that are coming up, are already there in the screen. I don't want to take much more of your time, but that is to say, the rush that seems to be a bit ambitious is precisely because we cannot lose this opportunity to be ready with inputs for this very important moment coming up in the summer of 2023, and then again the summer of 2024. I think I'll stop here so we have time for some more Q&A. Over to you, Alan. Thank you.
Ana Rosa, thank you. I think we've had an opportunity then to provide some of the important next steps and to show participants the activity and also the challenges ahead. And I think we've heard some very important information too in terms of evidence gaps and other issues that we're going to be needing to take acknowledge and deal with as we go through each of these pillar efforts. I think it's useful to mention that even as we are moving forward on these first three, we continue to start putting in line the last two pillars, both for peace and prosperity, so that we have all 17 SDGs that are covered through this effort. Colleagues, we've come pretty much to the end of the timing, so if there are particular questions, we certainly have some time to answer it, but otherwise I know that this is an hour and a half that was set aside, so if I don't see any specific questions that are coming up or requests to take the floor, we can begin to wrap up soon. So the floor is open for questions or comments, and I'll wait a minute to see whether they are coming before we decide to wrap up or proceed. Okay, so I think we have answered all of your questions through the discussion that we had today, and that's always a success. But I want to thank each and every one of you for participating today. We will certainly come back again on a regular basis to be able to provide updates. We are very keen to get further comments and expressions of interest to participate from member states. This will be a very significant initiative for us to carry out, especially over these next 2 years. So your support for it, both in financial as well as human resources, and your specific time and effort is much appreciated. And with that, let me thank all of the participants, of course, our team from the Secretariat, Ana Rosa and the team. Thank you for the chairs, for the planet and people pillars. Very much appreciate your engagement on this and really setting the stage for us as we move forward for those next two. So thank all of you, and we will certainly be in touch in terms of the follow-up and the next chance we have to give you updates. Enjoy the rest of your day, or in some cases evening, and we'll sign off now. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.